Welcome to So Very Easy. My name is Laura, and it is time for Block 7 of the Rainbow Sorbet Block of the Month Free Follow Along. It is a free pattern, and I'll put a link in the description so you can print it out and follow along. I'll be doing block number 7 in 2 different colorways, the Rainbow Sorbet color and my scrappy version. The background fabric in the Rainbow Sorbet is this beautiful soft beige. I'm doing the opposite, and I'm starting with a dark floral with lots of colors in it, and that way I can pull in lots of different scraps. So the background color is this lighter piece. I'm going to be doing the dark. The center is this beautiful blue. I will be doing a pink. The B are these little points coming off the center in a nice burgundy. I will be doing purple. Then we have some secondary points. They're going to be in another soft pink. I will also be using a pink. And the corners are going to be this blue and beige, and I will be doing those corner pieces in a green with the background fabric. But let's start with the Rainbow Sorbet selection. I like to start with my fabric pressed and starched. Then I cut it. So my A piece, which is the center piece, I'm going to cut at one 4.5-inch square. My background fabrics, I need 2 5.5-inch squares, and they're going to go together with the C 5.5-inch squares. And with the background fabric, 2.5 inches by 4.5 inches, and I'm going to need 8 of these. And they are going to go together with 2.5-inch squares from B and D. We will need 4 flying geese of each color selection. So I'm going to put my stacks together. And with flying geese, we need to sew these little squares onto the corners of the rectangles. Draw a line from corner to corner through all of the 2.5-inch squares. We start by placing one of those 2.5-inch squares on top of that rectangle. And most times, we're supposed to stitch right along that line. But I recommend stitching just over that line so that the stitching is going to touch the line but is not on the line. And by stitching right beside that line, you are allowing room for the thickness of that thread. And that stitching line is going to go towards the point that will get cut off. Now when this corner is folded back, those corners will match. You need to trim off this little corner, leaving about a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And I'll just press with my hands. And that way I have no chance of the heat of the iron stretching this. When I get the one side on, I need to add the second. The same technique, but going on the opposite side. Match the 2.5-inch square onto that rectangle and stitch just outside of that line, coming towards that point. Now it's important that you're making an arrow as you're stitching. If that stitching line goes sideways and you stitch along this line, you're going to be making a stripe. So by just stitching on that outside of the line, we're going to be able to finish these blocks. And when both those corners are stitched on, we're going to have a 2.5-inch rectangle by 4.5 inches. So we didn't lose any size, we just added those corners. We need 4 of the one color combination and 4 of the second color combination. For these corner half square triangles, we need fabric C and a background fabric. Place right sides together, draw a line from corner to corner. We need to stitch a 1/4 inch from that center line on both sides. So the stitching line is going to go on both sides, not the center. And do that to both pieces. When we finish stitching, cut them apart on that line that we drew from corner to corner. We're going to turn these into 4.5-inch half square triangles. And there's many different ways to square these up, but today we're going to be using the Eleanor Burns square up ruler. And since we need to have it at a 4.5-inch, we're going to use that 4.5-inch line. So we're going to be able to just take that ruler and slide it so that line is sitting on the stitching line. Once we've lined it up onto that stitching line, we're going to be able to trim this extra off. When those edges are trimmed off and this is pressed open, it's going to be a 4.5-inch square. Before we press it open, we can trim off the dog ears. You can always trim the dog ears off second if you'd like. I just like to do them first while it's already flat. A pair of snips will work quite fine. You just want to snip that corner off, coming right up to that stitching line, but not going into the stitching line. Now when this is pressed open, the dog ears have been taken off. And these components are going to make that block. We start with the center square, and that larger piece is going to point out, and those arms are going to come inside. And that'll go all the way around that center block. The next color is a repeat with that white coming out. They're going to go right on top of the last flying geese. The half square triangles will fit in the corners. I like to take my flying geese and sew them together first, and I can do that all in one pile. Once the flying geese have been stitched together, I like to press the seams up so that I'm able to see those intersections right in the corners. Now when they go back, I'm going to be able to sew everything together in rows. But by having that seam exposed, I'm going to be able to match up that point. On deciding which way the seams are going to press, I take my blocks and I turn them upside down, but I leave them in the same order. That way I can see all the seams. By having it upside down, I'm going to be able to judge which way I want to press the seams. And in this case, I would like to keep those points so that I can see them as I'm stitching them together. And that will be my deciding factor on which way to press the seams. So in this case, the seam is going to come out, this one will go in, and that one will come out. Once those two seams have been stitched, I will also make that decision as to which direction I would like those seams to go. And in this case, I'd like to see those points, so I've had the seams going out. Now all of those points I'm going to be able to see as I stitch the next blocks together. Rainbow Sorbet number 7 is now done, and this should be a 12.5-inch square. Let's see the combination in the dark scrappy. I'm going to do the center, the light color. My dark is going to be my background fabric, so it's going to be opposite. I have my 2 sets of flying geese. I could just continue to lay them out just like the pattern has recommended. But now I can change them up any way I want. We can take those flying geese and turn the outside ones flying out. That will create a square in those points and still giving us that star in the center. If we have both the flying geese flying in the opposite direction, we now have created a square in a square. By changing the direction of the outside geese, it changes this area here. And we can change those outside blocks, bringing that light inside. Now it appears that these are coming in. Let's switch up those flying geese again. So by just playing with those blocks, you get a total different look. I can even take and switch the color combinations for the geese. I'm going to continue the theme where my dark background fabric is going to be replacing the light background fabric. I'll still sew them together the same way and press them the same way. The same block in a scrappy version, done. And with that dark variation, you see more of a circle than the stars. Block 7 really does look quite different in the scrappy version. Thank you for joining me today on Sew Very Easy. Feel free to subscribe, and as always, come on back. Let's see what we're sewing next time in the sewing room. Bye for now.